Family Life and Family Policy Specialist for UNH Cooperative Extension. And about 25 years ago, I dedicated my life and all of my research to stopping this epidemic. And I'm going to ask each of these panel members. We have members of the school board. We have some professionals from the Department of Education in New Hampshire. We have a very brave student from Littleton High School who worked very hard to change the law in New Hampshire. And we have a superintendent of the Manchester school system with us tonight. And for just a few minutes, if you'd take a few minutes, we'd like to have a dialogue about the film, because that's what good communities do, is they have a discussion when they see something so profound and so provocative. And so if you'd be willing to stay for a few minutes, especially the young people who are here and the parents and grandparents who are here, I think it might be worth your while. I just want to start with my own reaction. I'm going to ask each of the panel members to give a 1-minute reaction, which is impossible, I know. But and then what I'd like to do is just ask you if you have some questions that these people who deal in this realm every day, either as students or professionals or as volunteers, could answer about this issue. In my research, and what we found is that this film, to me, my reaction, my 30-second reaction is it's about damn time. I think this was a film that touched on many of the issues that we as researchers have known about for years. It has reached epidemic proportions. The latest information that we have comes from the Center for Disease Control, a group of people who don't normally exaggerate, who estimate that in the state of Massachusetts, our neighbor to the south, there will be a 50% likelihood that by the time you reach 7th or 8th grade, you've experienced a very severe episode of bullying. There is some disagreement because many states still don't define bullying the same way, but the research shows that somewhere between 32% and 62% of our students in New Hampshire will be bullied each year in their schools. This is in spite of the fact that in 2010 we passed what I believe is one of the best bullying laws in the nation. And I'll take some responsibility for that, as well Brianna and some other people here who worked very hard on it. We've had about 20 states emulate our bullying law, just steal pieces of our bullying law, and that makes us very proud, doesn't it, Brianna, for the work that we put into it. But I have to say that at my students at UNH, the students that I meet in my work in UNH Cooperative Extension all over the state, in high schools, grade schools, and middle schools, that we're a long way from solving this problem, and that it continues to get worse. And one thing I will say, and this is just fact, the U.S. Department of Education estimates that, just like you saw in the film, about 189,000 young people in the United States stayed home from school today because of this issue. That another 179,000 approximately students brought weapons to school. Part of my work over the last few years has been on the National Crisis Team. I've responded to every major school shooting from Columbine to the shooting we had in Walpole here in the state over the past many years. And as a member of a group of researchers who worked with the FBI and the CIA to look at what the profile of the next school shooter would look like, we took 4,000 bits of data from 48 school shooters and fed them into the largest computers in the world at Langley Air Force Base. And we only came up with one match. And that was, these acts of violence have been committed by children like Allie. And I want to say one more thing, then I want you to hear from these other people. I'm a former special ed student. I attended a one-room school in Kansas. You can tell I'm not from New England right away, because I can't figure out what you guys do with your R's. I was severely bullied myself because I went from a one-room school to a high school. When they consolidated our little school, they sent me to a 2,500 student high school from a 28 student one-room school that I was in, and I hated it, and I was picked on and bullied, and it changed my life. You know, every day I work with teachers in our state, yet I have to sit in the parking lot for an hour and convince myself I'm worthy to go in and talk to them, because I still feel like Alec felt when I enter a school building, that I'm not worthy. And so, you know, one of the things that we've learned is the old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words shall never hurt me, are absolutely, as you saw, I think very well in the film, absolutely a lie. Words can hurt forever.
Good evening. My name is Kass Ardinger. I'm president of the Concord School Board. I was a member of the school board about a year ago when the board passed the policy on bullying, and I'm delighted to be sitting next to one of the authors of that law, and I'll just say publicly that I thank you, because it has given districts in New Hampshire the resources and the ability to come together to address issues of bullying in an important way that I think, I have to think that some of what we saw on the screen tonight, those schools did not have that kind of a resource. So, but I guess my overall reaction to the movie is that addressing issues of bullying really require nothing less than a change in culture. And I think that that's hard, and that's going to take time. I mean, just look at the tone of uncivility, the intolerance that we see at the highest levels that you can think of, from the presidential election to Congress to examples in our own state house, and it definitely filters throughout, and our children are not immune from learning that type of way to respond to the world around them. And so I think that it's important to understand, how do we address bullying, not just in our schools, which is obviously what I'm elected to do, but really in the country as a whole, in society as a whole. So I think that while I'm happy that we have the law to help us in schools, it only goes so far to punish or to put some kind of consequence on bullies. Really, by the time you get children in the office talking to the principal, it's too late. The damage has been done. The damage is done to the victim, obviously. It's also done to the culture of the school. So what I would, prefer to see is school systems addressing culture. And I hope that, and I think that we are trying to do that in Concord, and with your help and the help of other experts. I'm certainly not an expert, I'm not an educator, but I do bring to the discussion the values of the community, and I would want the values of Concord to, the values of our high school and middle school and elementary schools to reflect the value of Concord, which is, I think, a tolerant community in most ways. So thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Brianna Hartford. I am 18 years old and a senior at Littleton High School, which is about an hour and a half north of here. And like Dr. Smith said, I did help pass the anti-bullying law my sophomore year of high school. And my inspiration for doing that came from being the victim of bullying. I feel like, from the time I started preschool, I was identified pretty much as a very easy target. I was very sensitive. At about 10, 11 years old, I developed an acne issue, which I still have to this day. It's gotten a little better, but it was pretty bad for a while. And I, it took about 15 years for my hair to decide if it was going to be curly or straight. It was just frizzy. And then by the time I got to middle school, I just felt like I had higher morals than a lot of the other girls and guys. I was really outcasted for not wanting to party, not wanting to sneak out, not wanting to drink. And it led me to feel very alone and hurt. And so my reaction to this film is just I feel sick over it. It definitely stirs a lot of emotion in me to see kids feel the way that I always felt. And it's definitely time that we do something, because if we just stand up for each other, then the bullies don't win. And when you hear other people stand up for you, then you know that you're not wrong and you won't bully yourself.
Thank you, Brianna. My name is Tom Brennan. I'm Superintendent of Schools in Manchester. What I felt about watching that movie was embarrassed, angry, frustrated, because I know myself from time to time I've said, we'll take care of it. And we really haven't been trained well enough to take care of it. We have Dr. Smith come to our school district. We have worked with our staff. We've worked with our students. But I think the greatest area that we really need to concentrate on is how do we investigate? And it may sound, oh, that's simple. Well, it really isn't simple. It gets to a point where he said, she said, and we keep going back and forth. So my challenge to myself, and as I go back to our school district, is to actually talk about that with our administration. How do you investigate? What do you do? How do you react to a young lady who comes to you and says, I just don't feel well, they're not treating me well, or I'm hurt. And we say to them, don't worry, we'll take care of it. Or many of the words that you've heard, I've used. Kids will be kids, boys will be boys, girls will be girls. And as Dr. Smith and everyone else here has said, that we need to change that culture. The norm that I grew up in didn't really, at least I don't think so, had the impact that it's having now. We don't have the cyber situation where that's constant. It seems like it can be now constant every day, rather than, I hate to say it, well, just while you're in school. It's every day, every time, every part of night, day and night rather. So I guess the final word after reviewing this movie is frustrated and need to figure out what to do next. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Leather. I'm the Deputy Commissioner, New Hampshire Department of Education. And I was really struck with the unrelenting pain that we all saw on this film, just all through the film. And I was struck by the helplessness of everyone in the film. No matter how much power they had or how little power they had, everyone seemed to feel helpless. From watching the boy on the bus, to watching the bus driver looking up and thinking, I don't think I can do anything about this, to the kids on the playground, to the young man talking to the principal. The young man just couldn't express how terrible it was and how unrelenting it was and how little hope he had. We do have legislation in place in New Hampshire, and I think folks feel pretty good about that. Most districts now have policies in place in New Hampshire, but I have to say, we still get calls every day at the Department of Education, situations that you heard today, on this show here today. So it's still going on. The difference has not been made. I was really struck in the very end about the sense of hope in coming together to make a difference. I would hope that that is something that can come out of this. And I would suggest, and I know this is something that I'm going to say to Dr. Brennan next time I see him on this issue, maybe we need to ask the question, what can we do, what can each of us do to make our schools safe for our kids?
Well, now you know who's here, so what do you want to know? And what struck you about the film? Let's have a discussion about this very powerful movie. Who's brave? Oh, good. Here's some questions, and there's a microphone if you don't mind. So other people.
I'm wondering a little bit more about the law that you guys passed, because my kids are young.
Yeah.
And my son's in first grade at Parker Varney, Manchester. And I actually have to say that school is really good when it comes to bullying. If I have a concern and I call, they get down to the issue, and the principal will call me back and follow up. And with my son, I know if something's been done about it, but I don't really know much about the law that you guys passed.
It's really a simple law. It just made some changes. First, it defined bullying. The federal government has never defined it, and the federal government has no law against it. So states have been left on their own. And what we did first was define bullying. And once you understand that definition, it makes it really easy, I think, as a parent or a teacher to recognize what it is. Yeah. In our law, there are two parts to it. If this is okay, I'll answer this one if you guys don't mind. But if you want to argue with me, please do. But the way I see it as a parent, it's real simple. There are two aspects to it. The first aspect is it has to be behavior that interferes with your right to an education. You know, because this law just applies to school. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply yet to the community. It does in one sense, is that if something happens to you in the community that would affect your right to an education, then the school will investigate. So if you're out in line and something so severe occurs that you come to school the next day and say to a teacher, man, these kids were picking on me online and I'm scared to come to class, then the school will investigate under the law. The second part of it, the definition though. So the first part is it's something, and it can, you know, one thing we changed about the definition that most people had in their law is we said it could be a single incident. Most definitions of bullying before New Hampshire's law said that it had to be repeated, you know, like in Alex's case, an everyday kind of thing. But we found with the internet, there are some things that have happened and continue to happen in the state that are so powerful that are going to be out there on the internet forever that hurt so badly that we decided a single incident. You know, we had an example of a girl walking into a school, taking a photo of another girl in the shower, walking down the hall, uploading that, sending it, you know, almost school-wide by text and email. And all of a sudden we had a single incident that really interfered with her right to come to school and feel welcome and feel a part and safe in the school environment. So that was the first change. The second thing that we did, and this is the best part of the law because it's the part I wrote, I'm sorry, we put in the law this phrase, that bullying is something that is constituted by an imbalance of power. And I'm really proud of that in the law because it gives us a tool to measure it. So if two kids are about the same age, same grade, same color, same, you know, everything, and they're goofing in the hall, that might be goofing. That may be definitely against school rules. That may be interfering and harassment and all these other things, but it's probably not bullying because they're on equal ground. Bullying is what used to fall through the cracks because, like in Alex's case, there's an imbalance of power. Like, I'm more popular than you. I've got my posse here, and you don't. I am smarter than you. You have a disability, and I don't. I'm a long-term Concord resident, and you're a new immigrant. You know, you're a unpopular girl, and I'm with the cool girls. You know, because we found out in the research that we'd made a lot of mistakes. And you saw some of them in the movie. One is you can't mediate bullying. You know, you saw that teacher try to,
I was
you know.
disgusted watching that movie. I think I cried through the whole thing.
Yeah, and you saw that teacher try to mediate those two kids. You know, well, and the kid just walked away disgusted, you know, as he should have. Because of that imbalance of power, the perpetrator will always, you know, manipulate that. So mediation doesn't work. There's a victim and a perpetrator. And that's how we put it.
Kids, Andrew's 6 and Jaden's 5, I talk to them about bullying almost every day. And I always, it's not just the hitting, it's the teasing and the calling of the names and picking on someone because they're different or they're handicapped. And my kids know that's not right. So when someone is calling my son a name at school, he goes immediately and tells, and I think a big problem is parents are not sitting down with their children and explaining to them what should not be done and what should be done. And I think another thing is parents aren't encouraging their children to stick up for those kids that are being bullied.
Well, I really want to agree with our school board member here.
Well, I just wanted to say to that point that I know that in one of our elementary schools, Broken Ground I think it is, the old-fashioned way that teachers and staff would communicate to the kids if there was something going on is don't tattle. We don't want to hear that. Don't tattle on your friends. Now they've changed that and they're telling kids, they're proactively saying, tell us, tell us. So they want, administration wants kids to be part of the community. So don't turn your back if you see something wrong happening. That's sort of part of the culture that I was talking about before.
And it is, you know, and I think this is really important, and this is what the research has shown. It is, you're absolutely right, it's a school culture and climate issue. But it's not just a school problem, and it's not just a community problem, and it's just not a parenting problem, and it's not just a kid problem. It's everybody's problem, you know. And I really agree that Benjamin Franklin, the founder of our society, of our high school system, made it really clear in the early days, right down the road from us here, that the system that we call a democracy cannot survive without civility. And so he actually started a class that used to be required in every school district called civics, because he believed we should learn how to treat each other, and that only then would a democracy work. And I think we're losing that. At UNH, and I don't want to monopolize this, but I do want to put in a quick plug, because we have been working for 2 years with a group of 6 professors from different disciplines, and we just tested something called the Courage to Care, and I'm so darn excited. It's the best thing I've ever been involved in 30 years. And we are trying once again to teach 6th, 7th, and 8th graders empathy, civility, manners, and how to care about other kids. And I think, you know, we have done, as parents, and I speak for myself as a parent, but I think I've done, and many other parents have done a bad job in emphasizing civility. We pushed our kids so hard that many times we've forgotten the most important area of brain development, which is social and emotional learning. And if you really want good test scores, you have to teach the whole child. I think Franklin was right. Somebody else have a question? Yes. Back here, this gentleman.
Sure. My name is Judd Durant, and I live in Hopkinton. And I've been, I guess the thing that is driving me a little crazy is trying to put my finger on what's changed. So, you know, graduated from high school, 78?
Yeah.
And I guess to Dr. Brennan, we had a chance to visit one time, and we talked about the issue of classroom management, and that's one of the biggest challenges that perhaps this older generation has. And I guess I would ask the question, does it make sense, or what would be your response to giving the classroom back to the teachers? I mean, to some extent, give them the authority to set civility expectations. Because as I watch the movie here, I'm involved in Boy Scouts, where there you've got, you know, the good kids. Well, they're misbehaving there. I'm involved in robotics. You got the good kids. You know, it's so prevalent. And if you know, so I'll get involved and say, knock it out. But it's just not, that's not the norm. And they're somewhat shocked when you do that. So I guess I'm just kind of curious under the theme of, should we give the classroom back to the teachers? Is that possibly the issue?
I'll take a shot at that question. I think there are many variables, as Dr. Smith indicated. One of the difficulties we have, and I think I may have shared this before, was when I first started in the profession, whenever we called home, the first question was, what did he or she do, and I'll take care of it. They said that to us. Now, as a former high school principal, when I call home, one of the first reactions I get, and I think my colleagues still get it, is, what did you do? Who did something to my child to cause him or her to react that way? That's one piece, and it goes back to that whole notion of civility and expectation. The other piece is that, whether we like it or not, things have changed, and the teachers that we are training aren't really prepared to deal with that. Some intuitively can do it, but we need to talk to the schools of preparation for our teachers, and really put them in a situation that is real, not in a book or not in any other way. I'm trying to work with a local college so that we would have our teachers, they would be certified, and then after their certification they would come and work in our district for a year to earn their master's, but to get into it, not simply go there and not be supported.
Amen.
As we know, we've lost a lot of resources. It's hard to do that, but I don't like to blame it on money. I don't like to blame it on anyone, but the difference is so significant. And teachers, I believe, are fearful. Years ago, I used to, when a young man or woman gave me a difficult time and threatened to sue me, I'd say, here's my card. My number's on there. That's the last thing I'll do today. Because they will call, and I would get sued. And I think that's part of the cultural changes. But we need to do more in what we're doing, not only for preparing our teachers, but as I was indicating earlier, how do we train our current staff? How do we train our current administrators? And it's about this investigation piece, that dialogue that we saw several times in the office. That's what we're equipped to do. That's what we based everything on. Everything that we've done it that way because that's the way we've always done it. We need to be trained. I need to be trained. And others need to be trained. So a long answer to your question, but I have no doubt if we could keep it in the classroom and be dealt with within the classroom, that would be marvelous. It would be fantastic. The parents that you saw in this film, I don't get to see too often. The ones who come in and say, we really want to work it out. They're really angry at us most of the time for what happens in school. And in some cases, I can't blame them. But somehow we have to break that down and work together.
I just want to add to what Tom Brennan was saying there, because I think that's really important. But I want to say this: our young people have changed. They are very different than the young people, and the way that we dealt with this issue when I grew up doesn't work anymore. And one of the things you have to understand is bullying happens in places where teachers and parents and scout leaders and community members don't go. It happens on the overcrowded bus. It happens in the bathrooms. It happens just about anywhere where we don't have enough supervision. And the problem with that is we've really cut our school systems so dramatically that we don't have time. The way we learn manners in a society is that, if you remember this, Grandma had this cupboard you could crawl to, and she put all the things you could play with there because Grandma had many things she didn't want you to play with. And all of our child development specialists have taught us that the time we learn how to get along is when we're playing with one another. So Grandma would do something really nice. She'd have stuff for us to play with. And some of you remember, you get down there and play. The minute you took that wooden spoon and bonked your sister, Grandma was down on the floor. Well, things have really changed. I mean, just look at one issue, our child care in this state. We have the same number of child care placements that we had 20 years ago, but same number of placements, but we have about 40% fewer actual child care facilities. So all the small mom and pop, grandma, granddad child care that were in your neighborhood are gone for the most part. And we're driving 30 or 40 miles to drop the kids off. And then those, like many here in Concord and Manchester, are huge. And kids are not getting the supervision. So, this is a problem that starts very young. The other thing that's changed dramatically is the average preschooler in the city of Concord has seen more television than I saw until I was in college. And it's a huge generational change. And we have to, as parents and community leaders, we have to think about that. Yes, before we go any further, are there any young people here that want to say something? Because I'd really be interested to hear something. Yeah.
I'm loud enough, don't worry. My name is Stephen Kidder. I work with GLSEN, which is the Gay Lesbian Straight Educational Network here in New Hampshire. It's a national organization. And going off that last question is, how do you stop it? What do you do? I work with a Harvard professor on a way to stop that. In our case, it was to stop LGBT bullying. It's to stop it, name it, claim it. You stop that person from doing what they're doing. You stop them, say that's, and then you name that issue. Name what's wrong. What are you doing, and then you claim the issue as well. You make it personal. You say, in my life, it's always I stop the person and say, you saying that's so gay is offensive to me. You belittle me. You make me feel like a second-class citizen, and then I claim it. I'm a gay person, and I've dealt with this my whole life. And the fact that you think you saying that word and you not knowing what it means and what it does to someone else is, and as soon as they realize what they're doing, they generally stop. And a great teacher of mine used to do that, and she works at Concord High. And the first day of school, the first time someone says, that's so gay, she stops it, names it, claims it, and it never happens again. So it's not only just teachers, it's students and community leaders who stop it, name it, claim the issue as well.
Thank you very much. Very well put. Who else had a question or something? Yes. Could you pass the microphone?
First of all, I want to say that I'm proud to be a New Hampshire resident who has a law like that, so thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Me too.
My second question is directed to the DOE, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Paul. Okay, for Paul. I'm a teacher in a high school in New Hampshire. I teach ethics and social justice. And I would like to know if there is a curriculum units that deal with this specific issue, and if professional development resources are available for the teachers in my building.
Yes, there are curriculum units, and those have been sent out to the districts and provided. I think actually UNH has done some work around that.
We've been in every district in the state,
right?
But probably not yours yet.
I'm a private school.
Oh, okay.
And so should be made available and is available to every school, whether it's private or public. And there is much in the way of professional development in the same regard. And I just want to commend you for that question, because it's a question that says, what can I do in my situation to make a difference? And I just strongly want to say, I also want to commend the young man who just said what he said. I was at a professional development center that Dr. Brennan held just this past week. We were working with them, and I brought in a speaker who talked about warrior scholars. You know, how can we have our students be warrior scholars? Because it's not going to get easier. We need to learn how to deal with the situation as it is, and that's what you've done. And that's each person has to stand up where they live, where they are, and who they are, and we have to say we're going to make that difference now.
The thing that I was struck with was the whole idea of culture, and I think that really is key, because I mean the law is wonderful, but that again is after the fact. The thing is changing culture.
So that, and my theory is that the students, and I see this in my work, it's so wonderful because I see students rising up to try to change this themselves. And I think if we as adults can help them, give them voice, skills, and communication, that students can fix a broke system.
If I could address the issue of professional development and training, in Concord, and I'm sure in other school districts, we have some schools that have initiated things like responsive classroom and PBIS, which is positive behavioral interventions and supports. We have teachers trained in that, and we are, and different schools are adopting this type of, it's behavioral expectations. And it really is only available to a school if it adopts it as a whole school, because you can't have, one thing we know that's not effective is if teacher A says no running in the hall, but teacher B turns around and walks in the classroom. That's not effective to affect behavior on a school-wide basis. So these kinds of training, these kinds of, I guess they're curriculums, have to be adopted by a whole school. So we have, for instance, at Dame School, an elementary school, the test scores had dropped precipitously in the last 10 years. And that's also a connection that we haven't really talked about, but
Absolutely.
academic progress and behavior, it's all tied together. But at Dame, they were having some terrible problems with behavior, and their test scores were in the toilet, and it was a school in need of improvement and the whole 9 yards. The school was one of the early ones to adopt responsive classroom, and they saw a huge rise in their test scores and a huge drop in their behavioral incidents. We have another elementary school looking at adopting it, and I'm happy to say that just at the beginning of this school year, our middle school adopted PBIS, and they're implementing it bit by bit. But the latest information that I have is that adopting it or implementing it on the buses, and this is all staff. So this is everyone from teachers, administrators, custodians, bus drivers, all adults that come into contact with our kids on their way to and from school, whatever. They are trained in how to place expectations of behavior, simple expectations of how to enter a bus, how to get off a bus, how to find a seat, how not to punch your neighbor in the head, all of those kind of things, or there'll be consequences. But that part has been implemented in Concord, and I don't have numbers, unfortunately, but I know that the bus incidents have dropped dramatically as a result of that training. So
I want to say one thing just aside from that. Don't be fooled that just a curriculum or one approach is going to change this issue. Because the real question here was Alec sitting at the table with his mom. And if you remember that very poignant scene in the movie, when Alec was, she was really saying, and his dad was saying the same thing. They were asking this question. And those of you who have kids and have friends that you're worried about, this is the most important question that you can ask them. Who's got your back? And that's really what it comes down to. That's exactly what this brave young man was saying. Who's got your back? And if the answer is to that question, for your friend, for your son or daughter, for your student is nobody, then the next words out of your mouth ought to be, not what the parents said there, but they should be, I've got your back. I'll be there for you. I will scream and yell till something gets done. Now, I want to talk about the other side of this law that hasn't been talked about. I want to be a little controversial. I want to say this. We expected the bullying rate to go up after we passed this law, and it did not. It went down. And here's the problem, is kids will not report this unless they are in an environment where they feel comfortable reporting it. And so, that onus is on the teachers. It's on all of us in the community, all of us, to listen to our kids more in this issue. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lisa Hannell. First, is it Brianna? Yes. Okay. I want to say thank you. I'm assuming that was about 2 years ago that you helped pass this law?
Yes.
My son was bullied back in, actually it was his freshman year in high school. It was the 14th day of school. I will never forget it. The phone call I got from him. He was not bullied once. He was bullied twice in one day. And I have to say, Dr. Brennan, Mr. Deschard did a fabulous job of handling it. If it wasn't for that man, I don't know how I could have dealt with it. The only issue that I had is if my son hadn't come home and told me, I wouldn't have known. So My question is, if you're wondering, how can we keep this going, and how are we going to stop it? Why wasn't I told?
Thank you. As everyone was talking here, I was thinking about one of the disconnects that we have, but the law has really addressed, is that we have specific time limits that we need to notify parents, we need to conduct an investigation and report back to both the victim and the bully's parents. That's something that should be happening more often. Dr. Smith, when he mentioned the notion that there was an anticipation that you would see a rise in the bullying complaints, I think that's what I was trying to get to earlier in terms of how do we handle that as administrators, how do we react to the word bullied. What I'm hoping in our culture in Manchester is if you hear the word bully, I'm being bullied, it starts the clock right then and there. And that's difficult to change some of that thinking, well, let's find out a little more about it. No. I had a student in my office at one time who said, I've been bullied, and I indicated to that individual, it ends right here. Our conversation ends. We have 24 hours to find out or to get back to you on this, and that's what has to happen. That has to be an immediate reaction. So that's how you would have found out about it. And we keep working at that. That's very difficult because, again, as I said earlier, it's he said, she said, who pushed, who shoved, the imbalance of power, how do we discern what that is? And there's a fear, I believe, and I probably am not speaking, I'll say there's a fear that the administration will be running around for every time someone pushes or shoves someone. So we need to involve and get our young men and women to say, I am bullied, I have been bullied, and that's the word that triggers everything else. So hopefully, I hope it doesn't happen again.
It hasn't happened. Well,
Good.
Actually, a few days later he did, he's in the ROTC, and somebody walked by and scuffed his shoe in his uniform dress, but the commanding officer was right behind him and nipped that right away.
Sure.
But I also was wondering at the beginning, someone from Red River mentioned this video, this movie being brought to schools. Is this something that you plan on bringing to Manchester?
It would be something that I talked to the school board about, and I noticed we have a board member up in the audience here, and I'm sure she'll have some conversation about that. But I do think that's possible and should be done. We need to educate, as I said, not only our students, but our faculty and staff, administration, custodians, everyone. We too in Manchester are using PBIS. We're also using the responsive classroom. But it really goes back to the first comment about culture. We can give them all the laws, we can give them all the policies, all the procedures and protocols, and provide programs, but until we live it and breathe it, that's all they'll be. So, as I said, I'm looking for the word bully to be the mechanism that starts a lot of things in our school district.
We have a question right here. You give her the mic.
I'm just wondering, in the law, is there, okay.
I'm just wondering, is there provisions to help a kid like Alex after the fact, like you said, once they come and say, which I'm sure there's statistics that it's very, very difficult once you've gotten the self-esteem affected to come and say, I've been bullied. Are there provisions in the law that help a kid like Alex to gain confidence, to be empowered, to, just looking at him, what are his options for success and confidence when he is obviously a kid that has no resources at the school? And I have a part 2 to that question.
Okay, I'll just explain the intent of the law, and that's all I can do. But the intent of the law was that then within a 2-week time, which is what a school has, they would have to come up with a plan to help a child like Alec. And that includes a variety of things. What we pray for, but we don't have the resources for, is a wraparound of that child. That not only will we look at patterns and who he's with and who's got his back and those kind of issues, but also, this should trigger a whole sort of bells and whistles for the school of needs that Alec has as a student. Unfortunately, and I just want to be real frank with you, we have cut our education program in this state and our mental health program, which is the backup, so dramatically that we find that those aren't happening. So sometimes the kids like Alec, we notice it. Good people like Dr. Brennan and our State Department folks try to do what they can, but our resources are limited. Our Department of Drug-Free and Violence-Free Schools was the one person we had working in that area is gone at the State Department level. Our state Department of Education also has no real enforcement abilities, and that's something we have to think about. The State Board of Education does, but parents have sometimes had to force all the way to the state to get the results that they want. So this law is still playing itself out, and the courts are going to be the decider, unfortunately. And you know how much court time there is available in New Hampshire right now. Very little. So it's going to be years before we see how all of that plays out. Our prayer and our hope is that someday our schools will have the resources to give Alec the fair chance that he deserves by law.
I really feel like I've got to just say something here. You cannot wait for this law to make the difference. You cannot. Everything that Malcolm just said is absolutely true. You've got to go in and ask the question, how can we make our schools safe? It is our school. You are an owner of that school with the school district. You need everyone here, if you care about this, you need to step forward.
Part two, my experience as an educator is that peer leadership is the key to changing culture. Brianna, what helped you gain confidence and get the courage to step up and help make this law possible?
Well, what really gave me the confidence to help make change was, well, at the end of 8th grade, I went through a really hard bullying situation where my 8th grade class went on an end-of-the-year school trip, and these girls had acted like they were my friends for a little while then, and when we got there, it was about 9 o'clock at night, and they were talking about drinking that night, sneaking into the guys' rooms, all that stuff, and when I didn't want any part of it, they kicked me out of the room, and my dad ended up driving 2 hours at night to pick me up. And so that was absolutely devastating to me, and it happened just a couple days before the last day of school, so there was nothing that really was done. And then I had to start high school the next fall and was obviously very nervous about that. I was starting with basically no friends. But that summer I heard a story. His name was actually mentioned in the end of the film, Ryan Halligan. He was a 13-year-old from Vermont who committed suicide in 2007, I believe. Yeah, 2007, after going through being tormented at school and online. And it just broke my heart because I thought, you know, maybe I went through some really hard times, but I'm still alive. And so his dad actually does school presentations, so I worked for a few months to get him to come to my school, hoping that would make a difference. And so the following February, he did come to speak to my high school and my former middle school. And then other kids started confiding in me about how they had felt bullied. And then a couple months later, I read an article about an organization called Bully Free New Hampshire and the law that they were bringing forward, and that's where I really jumped on board, and it's really been helping to make the change that has given me the confidence.
I'd like to address that issue of peer leadership because I think I've seen examples of it, and it's so thrilling when you see it. You just have to remark on it. But an example that I think of that I saw this past winter was at Concord High School. There was a new program that they I guess jumped on board of, that was unified basketball, where the kids with disabilities were able to, for the first time, significant disabilities, for the first time play on a basketball team that was along with student athletes at Concord High. They played 3 games. I think they did 1 away game and 2 home games, and I got to go to one of the home games at which Governor Lynch came and did the toss-up. That gym has never been so filled with students. And what was so amazing was, and it was an electric kind of atmosphere, and the students there were cheering each team from both sides, and they were essentially cheering our kids with disabilities. Now, these are the kids who typically are targets of bullies, especially in a high school setting. And you had, and I had the pleasure of hosting the athletes, both the typical athletes and the developmentally delayed athletes at a school board meeting, and these young men and women could not have been more inviting and welcoming and treating their peers with disabilities in a way that it was just natural. They were friends. They went on the buses together, and the parents of the kids with disabilities were stunned. They never had this experience happen to their children. And what is important in that story is that these athletes made it cool to befriend kids that typically didn't have friends. And they were able to sort of emanate that ethic that, you know, everyone is a student at Concord High, and we want everyone to play together, and it's got to be the kids in school have to ostracize the bullies. That's how you're going to get that real cultural change, when it's no longer cool to be caught bullying, and somebody actually stands up, a kid will stand up and say, stop doing that. And I don't know if we're there yet, but that was a great example that I wanted to mention.
And I just wanted to mention that something that we failed to mention at the beginning that I should have said. I want you to know that Brianna Hartford, here in the middle, this year was given the Susan B. Anthony Award by the YWCA and several women's groups in the state. I think there's a question way up there.
Yes, and I think it's not the school, it's not the students, the parents have to get involved. My kids have gone through Bow High School from preschool all the way through, they graduated from Bow High School. And kids talk, so my son came home and said, I can't believe this, this exchange student from China, and the kids are calling him Chink. And the teacher calls him Charlie Chan. And of course, my husband was like, I immediately went to the principal and I said, this was happening. And he turned to us, because I brought my husband and dragged him with him. He said, you know, people made fun of me because I was Irish when I was growing up, and the teachers pick on me, they're feminazis. And I thought, oh my God, the principal of Bow High School is being bullied. But we didn't use that term bully. So I thought, this poor kid, I actually told my kids, you're on the hockey team. You back this guy up. Well, of course, he was kind of the enforcer, because he would, and he made a difference. Of course, he got in trouble a few times by, you know, interfering when they would kind of pick on this, you know, skinny little kid from Taiwan. And first, I got to tell you, before my kids were, they said, Mom, you're embarrassing us. You went to the principal. I told my children, I said, Brianna, I've got to tell you something. You wouldn't believe it, my kid called me the nerd. I was a nerd. Growing up in California, I didn't have the blonde hair. And at 16, I got accepted to the University of Berkeley, accepted me. And the world changed.
Yeah.
The world changed. And and the year later, had to drop into meet the cool girls. They wanted to be my friends. I'm like, gosh, you guys are so juvenile. Your world will change. And there's this thing, it gets better.
Yeah.
And for this young man here, my son is at Oberlin. Oh my goodness. Oberlin is this, where every person is respected. I can't believe this college. Every person is respected no matter what.
That's a great school.
So I think the parents have to get involved, because kids talk. They come home and say, I can't believe what an asshole someone did on the bus.
I agree with you totally, but you know, we have a phenomenon going on with the law in New Hampshire right now that I'm kind of worried about, and that is that, and this is happening in the North Country a lot. I think Brianna and some of the other folks that do, but parents have gotten involved on Facebook bullying particularly, and then they jump in and start bullying the kids, and it's a really bad example. And so we have to be really careful as parents how we react. You know, in Laconia, we just had an incident where, and you know, you saw the angst that parents feel when this happens to their children. But in Laconia, we had an incident recently where a father, his middle school son was being bullied, and he brought a gun back and pointed it at the children. And I know as a parent and as a foster parent the gut reaction that he had, but we've got to remember young eyes are watching, you know, when we're dealing with this situation.
There's this thing I just tell my kids called first chair. The first person who speaks up, and that's what I told my son, you say, this is wrong. You do the first chair, because all it takes is a voice to say, this is wrong.
Very well.
You are out of bounds. And believe it or not, that does make a difference by just using your voice and not standing back. And so, and I hate to say it, but I did tell my kids, do not get out of New Hampshire. One's graduated from California.
Yeah, they left, right?
One went to Ohio.
That's all. That's another night's movie and meeting, though.
But it shows things
Somebody.
are different.
We have a young lady down here who'd like to say something. Down in the red here.
Okay, I'm in 8th grade at Renlet, and I feel like there's not a child who would go through something like Alex or anyone in the movie went through, but most of the bullying happens back and forth, so it's not kids who don't want to go to an administrator or something to tell on their bully because they're afraid of what their bully will do if they get told on, but it's because they don't want to get in trouble themselves, because it's a lot of bullying is like back and forth now, and I know that at Runlet there isn't a kid like Alex that gets bullied constantly and doesn't have any friends. I don't know anyone without friends at Runlet, and so I think it's hard to work on an issue where there's back and forth bullying because a kid doesn't want to go up and get themselves in trouble as well as someone else because why do you want to be in trouble? But so I think that's a major issue at Runlet, and I feel like they don't see it in that they are trying to stop kids who are only bullied and have no friends rather than back and forth bullying because that's a bigger issue than someone just being bullied by themselves.
Okay, so do you mean like kids who bully two kids bullying each other back and forth?
Yeah,
Or?
like you can hear it in the halls and you can see it. Like if someone calls someone a name, they're gonna call someone a name back. So it'll be back and forth, and it won't just be like a bully on a kid and he doesn't do anything to like protect himself. Because I don't really know anybody who doesn't have friends at Runlet. I mean, there is like social class, well, kind of social classes, and like everybody has a friend in their own, like, I don't know how to explain it, but, what?
Clip, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big enough.
So everybody has friends. I mean, I really don't, do you know anybody around that? Yeah, so no one doesn't have any friends that wouldn't stick up for them, and so it's hard to pinpoint all the bullying that happens because it's not just a kid riding on top of another kid. It's
Right.
back and
I
forth,
see
and
what you're saying.
I don't know if they can't, I don't know that it can be pinpointed, but it happens a lot more than just one kid riding on another.
Could I ask you guys a question? Are all three of you